Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Um, this is obviously Gaman Akhtar Siddiqui with you. And this particular session, we are going to talk about resume. Now, what is a resume, first of all? Well, it's a written record of your education and the jobs you have done that you send when you are applying for a job. So sometimes it is synonymously used for curriculum vitae, that is CV. However, there is still some difference which you all must know, uh, being graduates. For example, few of the differences are displayed on the screen for you. The first difference is the purpose of writing a CV or a resume. So CV is most of the times used in academia, and it is used by academics in the field of study for masters and PhD applications. However, resume is sent to employers who hire for a wide variety of positions. So in a corporate setting, you often send a resume. So content of the body, the second point of difference. In CV, we present full academic history, including teaching, publication, research, award, and service, or whatever we have done. So whatever you have done is a part of your CV, right from your education experience and all other things, achievements, records, everything. However, in resume, you demonstrate your relevant skills and experience to show your suitability for a specific position. So, for example, if you have worked at 5 places, in CV, you are going to mention all the 5 places and the positions you have worked. Now, but in resume, you are going to talk about only those 3 organizations or 3 positions on which you worked and which are relevant to your current position you are applying for. So this is the difference between the content of CV and resume. As for length, CV is lengthier than resume. Resume is quite shorter than that. Focus, CV highlights your academic achievements and scholarly studies. So it's more on academic achievements. However, resume represents your experiences from previous jobs. So it's more experience oriented and more focused on skills rather than the education that you have got. Okay. So other information, for example, list of publications, presentations, teaching experiences, education, honors and grants, they we include in CV. However, in resume, we include skills and experiences, as I just mentioned, you have gained from previous jobs. Any other skills such as language or software proficiencies. In CV, we may include, I do not make it compulsory, but we may include references without asking, without the other person asking us. However, in resume, we do not include. We may give them references as they demand us. So these are a few key differences between a CV and a resume. As for the template for a resume, the first thing that you should have is your name on the top of everything. So your name is the first thing that you write, and then it is followed by your address, home address, obviously the present address that you are living at, then city or zip code in case the company wants to communicate with you through your postal address. And then the next thing you include is your official email address. So that's the most important thing to include in today's world, because most of the companies are moving online, so they may communicate with you through your emails, but official email is the best one to use rather than your personal email address. Phone number, obviously in this case you might include your cell number. Education, so we give this heading in the center and then we mention the university like this. Okay, so for example, we talk about, okay, I did this degree from this university and we mention any relevant coursework, right? And then degree, as you can see, the hints are given here. And then if you have studied abroad, if applicable, otherwise we may omit this. Then we come to your prior education setting. So your intermediate or your graduation, or maybe your matriculation. So we include these 3-4 things over here. And again, you mention on your right the city from where you did this, and if date is mentioned, because in few of the boards you are given date of announcement certificate, result date of announcement certificate, so you may include that. And then the next thing is experience. So you may mention the organization name and the position title, the position you worked on, and then again, where, in which city you worked. You mention on the right side, month, year, which means that from which date and year you worked, you started working for the organization, and to what date you performed the activities over there, you served them. So beginning with your most recent position, that's the key. Describe your experience, skills, and resulting outcomes in bullet or paragraph form. So both ideas are valid. However, most of the times we see bullets being used for experience, education, or every other thing that we write in a resume. So begin each line with an action verb. Now, what's an action verb? We are going to talk about action verbs in the later part of this video as well, and include details that will help the reader understand your accomplishments, skills, knowledge, abilities, and achievements. Now, if you see this particular line, you have to use 7 C's, because you have to portray your skills rather clearly and concretely, so that the person can understand what experience, what have you got over the over the years of experience. So next thing is quantify where possible. Sometimes you need to use those digits, those figures such as GPA or any percentage or any kind of reward that could be quantified. For example, a position or something like that. Do not use personal pronouns. Each line should be a phrase rather than a full sentence. So this is also important, because sometimes we start writing sentences and the whole space gets occupied. So we need to be careful. We need to be brief as well as to the point. So in the same way, we are going to mention any 1, 2, or 3 organizations you have worked for, and what experience you have, abilities and knowledge you have got from working for the organization. And then leadership and activities. So any leadership skills that you got, or any other activities that you perform. Now, this section can be formatted similarly to the experience section, or you can omit descriptions for activities. If this section is more relevant to the opportunity you are applying for, consider moving this above your experience section. Now, this is important, that sometimes what happens, organizations are more concerned with your education. So you put the education section first. However, in some other organizations may not be interested in what you have done academically. Rather, they are more interested in what you have, what experience you have and what skills you have. So if this is the case, you should mention the things, the experience section and this sort of activities and leadership skill section before mentioning your education. So you can switch places of these sections also, right? Now, next thing, skills and interests. So however, these things are optional, but it is important to include these sections, being a recent graduate, because they are important to portray a positive image of your professional personality. So, for example, you may mention the technical skills you have. For example, you have mastery over some computer software or programming sort of thing in business arena, or language you can speak in our context, since it is a multilingual context, we can speak 3 to 4 languages very easily, if not at least 3 languages: your own mother tongue, the national language, and the official language. So you should mention the languages you can speak. Why? Because this shows that you are able to communicate with a variety of people. Thus, you are able enough to expand the horizon of your company to a wider audience, to the wider recipients of the product or services. Next thing is any scientific techniques or laboratory, or for example other sort of scientific skills if you have, again if applicable. Interest, this is important. You very well know that companies deduce your personality based on your interest also. So you should list activities you enjoy that may spark interview conversation. But again, mention those interests which you are really interested in and which you are able to justify, rather than just portraying a very positive image of you on your CV or your resume, but in real you are unable to talk about them, you are unable to do anything, any such thing. So let's talk about one of the samples of a resume. Remember, we do not give this heading resume or anything. The first thing to be on the top of the page is your own name. So for example, this is a name uh, of the person who is writing or who is uh, making the CV, Roberta Josephina Maddox. So your name and then address, postal address, for example, particularly the postal code or city code, and then your official address. Always use your college or university email account and check it frequently, even if you have enabled forwarding. So personal contact number, very important. If you see education, so name of the university, and okay, and for example, where is this and what degree did you did, so any specialization if you have done, and any GPA. So this is where, if you see, the point of quantifying comes. Quantify your resume, which means you can give quantity, give numbers. Okay, specialization, anything relevant coursework with the that is relevant with the position that you are applying for. And when did you complete this degree? For example, May 2018. And another degree, if you have done any third degree that you have done. Uh, yes, if you are including, if you are talking about any coursework, be sure it's relevant to the position to which you are applying for. So for example, you did some research in your undergraduate course, uh, for example, on supply chain management and something like that. So, and you are applying for a job for which this research is relevant. So you can mention this, and but again, you need to see the relation, the relevance. And experience, use different verbs, right? Examine, so these are action verbs. Examine, and then researched. So use action verbs. If you can remember, related to 7 C's of communication, this was like putting action into verbs rather than nouns. You should not write did examination. No, rather put action into verbs. Examine the profitability of foreign market. So the name of the company you work for, where is this company located, and the duration of your job over there, and what was your designation. And then you can write a paragraph, or you can write this sort of information in bullet form also. This examined profitability of foreign market for new fruit drink using analysis of comparable brands. Okay, once again, if you see, managed focus groups, and then created ideas, presented findings. So these are the action verbs that the developer of the CV is using, and make sure that you use them very, very carefully. I'm going to show you a list in which you can see what sort of verbs you can use for variety of actions. One thing. Secondly, you can use this part in uh, write this into two ways. First is bullet form. That's also okay. So for example, examined profitability on one line, and then managed focus groups on the next line, and then created ideas on the third line. So go on. And the other way is this. You can write in a paragraph form, short paragraph form. But again, you see, once again, we are not using personal pronoun. For example, I. No, you are using action verbs. You are using different action verbs for different things. So any experience that you have are going to mention in this format, using this format. Okay. And then leadership. Note that relevant interest and skills can be demonstrated through campus and volunteer activities, as well as through previous employment. Now, any sort of interest or skills you have got through volunteer work. Now, most of the students ask that we are fresh graduates, undergraduates, we are fresh graduates, we do not have any experience. So what can we write in the experience section? What can we write in a skills section? So the best thing is to use your experience of academia. You volunteer for so many activities, and you can use all of those skills, all of those interests in order to develop an interesting and eye-catching CV. Okay, so any sort of skills, it's not necessary that you use the word leadership. You can use the word skills also here in order to, uh, 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 convince the employer that what particular skills you have used, or you can just omit it and merge this with this form, skills and interests. So again, up to you. So technical skills, language skills, and interests. So if you see in the previous format in the template that I showed you, laboratory skills, for example, but the writer, the developer of this resume is not including any of them. So you can include anything that is relevant in your experience, and you can portray the skills for your selection in your resume. Make sure that you be consistent with presenting data. Use either numerals or words, but not both. So if you are using 500 students, you are using 500 numbers, numerals. So use numerals throughout the CV. If you are using words, so 500, in word form. So use word form. So this is the key, that you have to be consistent with many of the things. So if you are using bullet forms, for example, in experience section, use bullets for all the experience section and for all this as well, right? With leadership and all of this. But if you are using paragraph form, you can use paragraph form also. So this is one of the many ways to create a resume, and this particular resume that you see on your screen is a sample shared by Harvard Business School. So it's very authentic and very relevant to your course. I hope you are going to use it and you are going to learn a lot from this. So this is another version an of a resume. This is another sort of sample that you can use for a recent graduate resume. So for example, if you see, the most important thing is your name on the top. And one more thing which you should understand about these two things is that uh, whether it's Harvard style or this style, your photograph is not a part of it, right? So make sure you do not include this. And then if you see, the address is written, the postal code, phone number, email address. That's also important. So if you see a slight change in the organization of the things, but the things are pretty much the same. Now, the objective should not be vague. Job objective. Now, this is very important because if you are applying for an organization, you should write an objective. So the objective should be very clear. So if you say that I want to work for a competitive organization, now this is pretty vague. Now, for what position you want to work, and and in what capacity you are going to be beneficial for the organization. In what do you mean by competitive environment or competitive industry? So to work as a management trainee, right? So you should be clear about your role in the organization in an industry that uses my education in management and marketing. So you are not just supposed to be uh, using words like competitive industry or something like that. You should be very careful and clear about what your role will be and where will you be performing those activities, that role, with opportunity to eventually be a senior executive in marketing. Now, if you see this particular objective, you are mentioning the position, the specific position you are interested in, and what sort of company or the industry or what sort of department of that organization you want to work for, and the ultimate goal that you have in your mind, which you want to achieve by working on this position. So your job objective should be very clear. If it is not clear, if your objective is not clear, how are you going to contribute to the organization? So this is important, that it should be simple and clear. That's it. Sometimes you use objectives that are borrowed from others and that are not relevant to our position. So you need to tailor this objective. If you are applying for another position, you should actually tailor it according to the position that you are working for or you are applying for. So make sure that you do this. Specialization, you can add this. If you remember in the Harvard style also, we were mentioning any specialization under, but that was under the heading of that the education that we received. So however, in this style, you can use this also. Specialization, heading specialization in all capital letters, and then you mention in bullet forms. Okay. Now, next thing is that you mention your education. So see again, bullet form. So postgraduate diploma in business management from where? From Amity Business School, comma, Noida. Now, this is kind of a place which you should mention, and your institution and the city or the state should be separated by a comma. Make sure that you do this, as we do. Sakkar IB University, comma, Sakkar. So if you are mentioning the city name, you should mention, you should use a comma to separate them, and then colon and the year that you did it. In the same is the case with the other three qualifications. Okay, scholarships and awards. All scholarships, prizes, and awards won in the college are mentioned here. So most of the times students are, sir, we do not have, for example, any scholarship, or we do not have any awards. So what should we do? See, anything, it is, first of all, understand that these things are not hard and fast. If you think that something is not there, so you can just omit a heading. For example, in the previous template, we could see that we could omit the heading of leadership and we could mention skills at that place and then other things, or we can just write skills and interest and focus on them. However, if you see, there will be something in your academic career that you can highlight in order to grab the opportunity. Or if there is anything, there is nothing, for example, to just omit it and talk about any other achievement or experience, right? And again, in terms of achievement, if you see, or any sort of award, you can mention all the volunteer work that you have done. Okay, so that can also be a part of your work experience as well. But sometimes your experience, your work for a particular society or particular kind of community is so strong that you receive something as an award, kind of a sheet, kind of a certificate, or anything. So you should mention any of them here. Strengths, obviously you should know your strengths. Highlight strengths that will help you in the job that you are applying for. Again, mention the strengths that are relevant to the job, not generally. Okay, so if you are applying for a job that puts you in the field more often rather than office work, so mention all the strengths that are aligned with the field work rather than the office work. Okay, so work experience, instead of writing no experience, mention all activities with which you have been associated as a student. So that's the important part of this CV, of the, sorry, resume, that you must include any of the experience that you have got by working as a volunteer, as an active participant for any society or any organization. Make sure that you have something to to grab the interest of the employer. Okay, and once again, if you see awarded, organized, and worked, conducted. So once again, even this, in the developer of this CV is using action verbs. So use these action verbs quite often rather than just using personal pronouns. Once again, if you see here, you will not see any personal pronoun. So you'll see focus on actions rather than any sort of other thing. So then references, again, as we mentioned earlier, references are available on a request. So we do not mention, but we just write like this: available on request, or will be furnished on demand. Something, some sort of phrases like this can help us. So last but not the least thing that I would like to share with you is the list of action verbs for your resume. So if you want to display any activity or action related to leadership, you may use any of these words. For example, organize this project, um, spearheaded, which means you led the team, and then analyze this thing, administered, accomplished, or evaluated. And for communication, for example, you may use any of these words. Mediated, moderated, you moderated a conversation, or you moderated a talk or a seminar. So or you negotiated something on the behalf of your organization or on the behalf of your uh, society, student society. So for research, for example, you have got these words, and for technical skills, you may use these words. Similar is the case with teaching, quantitative, creative, helping, and organizational work that you did. So these are the things which can help you to um, put action verbs in your resume, and that is the thing that is going to help grab the attention of the employer and land you a good job. So that's all from my side. I hope this session would be helpful for you. If you have any questions, you may send me through email.